This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Today's topic is clinical features of iridocyclitis. It is a topic in UVA. The topic UVA has been covered already, but we are just revising the few important topics which I have already been discussed earlier. So, iridocyclitis. Itis means inflammation. Irido means iris. Cycle or cyclo means ciliary body. So, uvea is mainly divided into three parts. Choroid, from posterior to anterior, if you come, it is choroid, ciliary body, and the iris. What is the meaning of the word uvea? Please move on to the next slide. I hope all of you have downloaded this PPT which I have sent you yesterday. So the word meaning of uvea is nothing but grapes. Okay, it literally means grapes. The uvea has that appearance of grapes, a bunch of grapes. Like so, if you take the anatomy, it has mainly three parts: iris, ciliary body, and choroid. So iris is nothing but which is present in the front of the lens. Okay, just it forms the posterior surface of the anterior chamber. So the point where the zonules are attached to the lens, that part is called ciliary body. And the remaining choroid which is there, which extends posteriorly till the optic nerve head, both superiorly and inferiorly, this part is called the choroid. So now in iridocyclitis, we shall be discussing about inflammation of iris and ciliary body. So what are the clinical features? We will be just discussing highlights or the main things or the main clinical features which are seen in case of iridocyclitis. What are the causes of iridocyclitis? When do they occur, or what is, under which conditions do they occur? How do they present? What should you look for in a patient with iridocyclitis? How should you evaluate a case of iridocyclitis? These all will be discussed later on. But first, to understand what is iridocyclitis, you should first be able to pick up a case of iridocyclitis and its presenting features. Now, coming to the inflammation of uvea, when there is an inflammation of the uveal tissue, that is the middle layer or the middle coat of the eyeball, extending from the iris till the choroid posteriorly, it is called as, the complete tissue is involved, it is called as uveitis. The middle layer coat of the eyeball is involved or it is inflamed, it is called as uveitis. It is used to describe inflammation of the uveal tract. Uveal tract has three parts: iris, ciliary body, and choroid. In reality, it comprises a large group of diverse diseases affecting not only uvea but also retina, optic nerve, and vitreous. So when there is inflammation of uvea, the surrounding structures, the inner layer, that is the retina, the outer layer, the sclera, the optic nerve, the vitreous, all these also get involved in a secondary manner. So the primary problem is in the uvea. So the surrounding structures also gets involved. So based on the amount of involvement of the uveal tissue and the amount of involvement of the surrounding structures and the type of presentation of clinical features in the surrounding structures, we now nomenclate or we give a name to the type of uveitis. First, when we see a case of uveitis, we should be able to describe what are the clinical features, how do they present, and is it iridocyclitis or is it iritis only, or is it cyclitis only, or is it choroiditis? So which of these, or is it a combination of all these three things? So we should be able to identify that. So for that we have to start the classification first. How do you classify a case of uveitis? So there are two main types of classification: IUSG classification and Sun group of classification. So now what is this classification. This classification can be clinical, anatomical, morphological, or etiological. Now, what is this clinical classification? Clinical classification is either it is acute, chronic, or recurrent. It is based on the duration of presentation of the case of uveitis. Is it acute? Acute in the sense, has it started recently within the last 2 weeks? Chronic, if it is more than 6 months. Recurrent, it comes, resolves, subsides, and then again it comes. So that is called as recurrent. So based on the type of presentation and the duration of presentation, you can classify uveitis as acute, chronic, or recurrent. Anatomical classification. Anatomical classification is nothing but which part of the uveal tissue is involved. Is it the anterior part, posterior part, or the middle part, or the intermediate part which is involved? If the complete uveal tissue from anterior to posterior is involved, you call it as panuveitis. That is, complete uveal tissue is involved. Morphological classification. Morphological classification is nothing but it is granulomatous or non-granulomatous. It tells us the type of uveitis, whether it is granulomatous or non-granulomatous. Granulomatous are mainly seen in chronic diseases like tuberculosis, syphilis, sympathetic ophthalmia, brucellosis, Vogt-Koyanagi-Hada's disease. So all these conditions, sarcoidosis, these are all chronic conditions which give rise to granulomatous uveitis. Non-granulomatous uveitis is the acute reactive uveitis, which is commonly seen in conditions like psoriasis or any connective tissue disorder which is involved in the body. It presents with non-granulomatous type of uveitis. Etiological is again based on the cause, whether it is infective, non-infective, whether it is infective conditions like tuberculosis, syphilis, non-infective conditions like sympathetic ophthalmia, or whether it is due to connective tissue disorder, depends on the type. Then the next one is traumatic. So traumatic uveitis can be classified as whether it is non-surgical or surgical. Non-surgical could be because of pure trauma, which could involve the uveal tissue. That is called as non-surgical uveitis. Surgical or IOL related uveitis, if you have performed a surgery and the uveal tissue has got exposed and it has not been properly buried during surgery and properly covered, this can lead to surgical induced uveitis or surgical IOL related uveitis. Some chemicals and some drugs also can lead to toxic uveitis. And the last one is masquerade syndrome. Here it appears like uveitis, but it is not uveitis. So that is why it is called as masquerade syndrome, where, for example, the patient could have a tumor because of which the features of uveitis are seen, but the problem is not the inflammation. It is secondary to intraocular tumor which the patient is having. So these are all different types of IUSG classification. This is IUSG is nothing but International Uveitis Society. Then coming to infectious, as we have already discussed, based on etiology, it could be bacterial, fungal, viral, or protozoal. If it is non-infectious, then it could be systemic associations like VKH or serpiginous choroiditis, where there is a systemic association, but it is non-infective. Now coming to type of inflammation, we are having two types of uveitis based on the type of inflammation, whether it is granulomatous or non-granulomatous uveitis. So granulomatous is something which is insidious in onset, which is chronic, and there is congestion around the eye, mild pain will be present, iris nodules will be present, which you can see here around the pupil, and you can see the capes, mutton fat capes. Capes are nothing but keratic precipitates. These are proteinaceous deposits which are stuck onto the endothelium of the cornea. So posterior segment is commonly involved in case of granulomatous uveitis. When it comes to non-granulomatous uveitis, here the onset is well defined, means a short history will be usually present. It is acute in course. Injection is very severe, means severe redness is present. Pain is very high. KPs are very fine, means they are very fine KPs. Small KPs will be present, and iris nodules are absent. Posterior segment is rarely involved. That means the inflammation is limited to the anterior segment only. That is in front of the iris and in the anterior chamber only. So basically, granulomatous and non-granulomatous differentiation you have to know. This is a commonly asked question in your exams. Differentiate between granulomatous and non-granulomatous uveitis. The etiology for non-granulomatous uveitis is connective tissue disorders or any simple connective tissue disorders, and whereas in case of granulomatous uveitis, it is toxic. Granulomatous uveitis, it is tuberculosis, syphilis. All chronic conditions commonly involve granulomatous uveitis, and that is examples for those are syphilis, tuberculosis, toxoplasmosis, sympathetic ophthalmia, brucellosis, sarcoidosis. These are all conditions which cause chronic granulomatous uveitis. So based on the anatomical classification, which segment is involved in the eye, whether the anterior part is involved, the intermediate part is involved, or the posterior part is involved. Based on that, you decide the type of uveitis. These pictures are self-explanatory. If all the segments of the uveal tissue are involved, then it is called as panuveitis. Now coming to the Sun working group of anatomical classification of uveitis. This classification is given by Sun working group, which is anatomical classification of uveitis. Here the uveitis is classified into anterior, intermediate, and posterior and panuveitis. The inflammation is mainly primary site of inflammation in anterior uveitis is in anterior chamber. The components are iritis, iridocyclitis, or anterior cyclitis. Intermediate uveitis is the primary site of inflammation, which you can identify is it in the vitreous. Whereas the components which are commonly involved in uvea are pars planitis or posterior cyclitis or hyalitis. Planitis and cyclitis, all these are different names for ciliary body. Ciliary body can be divided into two parts, that is pars plana and pars plicata. So when there is involvement of pars plana region, then it is called pars planitis. When there is involvement of plica, then it is called as posterior cyclitis. Posterior uveitis is nothing but uveitis involving retina or choroid. So when the choroid is involved, you call it as choroiditis. When one small segment of choroid is involved, it is called as focal. When multiple regions of the choroid is involved, it is called as multifocal. And chorioretinitis, retinochoroiditis, retinitis, neuroretinitis, these are all different combinations of the posterior uveitis. When choroid is involved first and the inflammation progresses onto the retina, it is called as chorioretinitis. Means choroid is getting involved first and then the retina is involved. So then it is called as chorioretinitis. Then the retina, if the retina is involved and the inflammation progresses onto the choroid, then it is called as retinochoroiditis. If only the retina is involved, then it is called as retinitis. If optic nerve and the retina is involved, then it is called neuroretinitis. So different names are given for the same thing based on the type of involvement or type of the posterior segment involvement. If panuveitis is present, anterior chamber, vitreous, choroid, retina, all segments of the eye are involved. Now, what are the descriptors of uveitis? Uveitis can be onset. Based on onset, it can be sudden or insidious. Then, based on duration, it can be less than 3 months or persistent if it is more than 3 months. Now, what is acute? These episodes are characterized by sudden onset and limited duration. That is, they have a short duration of inflammation. Recurrent, repeated episodes separated by a period of inactivity with treatment more than 3 months of duration. So these patients have a gap of 3 months, and then they again develop uveitis. There is a small period of gap in which time there is no uveitis, and then again they develop uveitis. So they keep coming, subsiding, again keep coming. So resolving, subsiding, keep coming again. So this cycle keeps on repeating. That is why it is called as recurrent uveitis. Chronic uveitis is nothing but once it starts, it persists for more than 3 months, and this uveitis, persistent uveitis with relapse in less than 3 months after discontinuing treatment. If after treatment also within 3 months, if it relapses, then also it is called as chronic uveitis. Now, based on all these classifications, if you want to describe this particular picture, you can see there are a lot of posterior synechiae on the lens. There is a membrane and behind the cap, behind the cornea, and the iris is, the pupil is dilated. The iris is stuck onto the lens, and you can see a lot of KPs on the cornea. So based on all these classifications, finally you can describe this particular type of uveitis as acute non-granulomatous anterior uveitis due to collagen disease. So if you see a particular picture like this, then you have to describe. Say for example, in this particular picture, if you see, let us take for example, the duration is less than 3 months. KPs are present which are not mutton fat KPs, so it is non-granulomatous. Anterior part is involved. Posterior segment we are not sure, we are not able to see. So it is anti-acute non-granulomatous anterior uveitis due to collagen disease. So this is the complete classification of the particular condition. So usually, if the condition is acute non-granulomatous and anterior uveitis is anterior part is involved, then the etiology is commonly regarded as collagen disease or connective tissue disorder. Now coming to symptoms. Symptoms are nothing but pain, redness, photophobia, dimness of vision, lacrimation. The most important symptom is pain. Pain, redness, photophobia. These three are the most important symptoms, and others are associated features which are commonly seen. Photophobia and dull aching pain are the classic presentation, and the redness is usually circumciliary, which is present like a circle around the eye. If you see the conjunctiva, in case of anterior uveitis, what we come across, there is a circumciliary congestion. If you see the cornea here, around the cornea, there is increased redness as compared to the remaining part of the sclera. So this is called as circumciliary congestion. On the cornea, when you examine, you see the type of KPs. You can see a lot of dots are seen on the cornea on the endothelial side. So that is why you define the type of KPs, whether they are fine, mutton fat, fresh, or old. Based on that, you classify the type of KPs. Now, what are KPs? KPs are nothing but aggregates of inflammatory cells on the endothelial surface of the cornea. So when they are in the form of triangle in the inferior part of the cornea, like in the second picture here, you can see they are in the form of a triangle here. Then you call it as Arl's triangle with its base down triangle on the inferior part of the cornea. It is because of the convection currents in the aqueous and gravitation of the particles. These particles are heavy, and there is a continuous eddy currents which are present within the anterior chamber, which make the KP settle down. So the base is broad and the apex is narrow. So it forms a, she takes the form of a triangle. So that is why it is called as Arl's. It is given a name called Arl's triangle. So it is nothing but aggregation of inflammatory cells on the endothelial surface. Now coming to type of KPs, we have mutton fat KPs. You can see they are large, greasy in shape. So they are stuck onto the posterior surface of the endothelium. So if you see in this particular picture, there are white, smoothy, round type of KPs. And if you see this picture, it is a crenated, or the margins are sharp. They are not fuzzy or buzzy, and they are called as old pigmented KPs. They're usually colored. So coming to anterior chamber, what do you see in the anterior chamber? Because of the leakage, there is in the blood or leakage or breakdown in the blood aqueous barrier, you see a lot of proteinaceous deposits which is present in the anterior chamber. So this is the slit of light which is thrown into the anterior chamber, a parallelepiped light or a parallel light. You can see a protein translation from the iris and ciliary vessels produce a coalescence of the aqueous. It is nothing but similar to if in a dark room you allow a small ray of light or allows sunlight to come through a small opening, you see a lot of particles in the room. So something similar to that, this is called as flare. So it is nothing but protein translation. So you put a slit beam in an appropriate angle and then you examine for this. So it is a very important sign. It just indicates that the inflammation is active. So these people, some group have classified the intensity of inflammation based on the amount of flare. If it is 0, there is no flare. If it is +1, the flare is faint. If it is +2, that means it is moderate flare. The iris and lens details can be made out. If it is +3, then it is called as iris and lens details are very hazy, then it is called as marked flare. If it is +4, an intense flare where the iris details are not very clear. It is something similar to your watch. If the watch, the glass is clear, the front glass is clear, you will be able to see the time. If the glass is not clear, then you will not be able to see the time. If there is something in between the glass and the time or the needles of the time, and you will not be able to see it clearly. So based on the intensity of the haze, it has been classified into grades. Then the next thing is cells. So cells are nothing but, these are also seen in the anterior chamber. It is nothing but collection of floating inflammatory cells in the anterior chamber. The primary lymphocytes and neutrophils. They are mainly lymphocytes and neutrophils. They indicate active inflammation. So they indicate active inflammation. The flare and the cells indicate active inflammation. The inflammation is active. So KPs do not indicate active or old infection or old inflammation. KPs just tell whether this is acute or whether it is chronic. But cells and flare will tell us whether the inflammation is active, whether it is very though it is acute, it is active, whether it is acting now or not. So the cells can be classified based on the grades called Kimura's grading, +1, +2, +3, and +4. It is based on the number of cells. 5 to 10 is +1, 11 to 20 is +2, and 21 to 50 is +3, and more than 50 is +4. There are different gradings for anterior chamber cells. We have Sun working group of grading also. It is also something similar to that, but just the number of cells vary. Here 1 to 5 have been given 0.5 plus, and 6 to 5 have been given 1 plus, 6 to 25 have been given 2 plus, 3 plus, and so on. So this is nothing but the cells which can be seen through slit lamp. These cells, when you examine the anterior chamber of the eye, you will be able to see them through slit lamp. So if you are able to see you should be able to count them a number of cells. If the cells are more than 50, then inflammation is very severe. It is +4 cells. If the haze is too much, then it is +4 grade flare. So AC cells, AC flare, KPs. These are the classic presentations in the anterior chamber and the cornea. Coming to the next presentation, that is hypopyon. Now, what is hypopyon? Hypopyon is nothing but collection of inflammatory cells that settle down in the anterior chamber. If you see this particular picture, there is collection of pus cells in the inferior part of the anterior chamber. It is commonly seen in conditions like ankylosing spondylitis, Behçet's disease, infections, lens-induced uveitis, and malignancies. So these are common associations in case of iridocyclitis. Sometimes, rarely, you come across hyphema. That is nothing but collection of the blood in the anterior chamber. It could be due to viral uveitis. It could be due to trauma, malignancy, Fuchs heterochromic iridocyclitis. chronic uveitis with uveitis or severe uveitis. These are all different conditions which give rise to hyphema in case of iridocyclitis. Posterior synecdoche. Now, iris, once it is inflamed, once it is swollen, what does it happen? It goes and sticks onto the lens. When it sticks onto the lens, it is called as posterior synecdoche. The posterior surface of iris gets adhered to the lens. There are adhesions between the iris and the lens capsule. That is called as posterior synecdoche. Inflammatory mediators produce fibrin deposits and fibroblast proliferations. This indicates chronic and recurrent inflammations mostly are located in the pupillary bladder. These type of synecdoche are most commonly seen in chronic iridocyclitis. As we have discussed, the conditions which cause chronic iridocyclitis are tuberculosis, syphilis, toxoplasmosis, and so on. Suppose there are synecdoche formed and you dilate the pupil. The pupil takes an irregular shape. That shape is called as festooned pupil. Multiple posterior synecdoche with application of mydriatics cause intervening normal circle of the pupil to dilate. So the pupil where it is not adhered posteriorly to the lens capsule, it starts to dilate. But the point where the pupil is adhered to the posterior capsule, it does not dilate because it is stuck onto the anterior capsule to the lens. So it gives an irregular dilatation or irregular shape in the dilatation of the pupil. So that is called as festooned pupil, which you can see here. Normally, if you dilate, the pupil has to fully dilate. But in this case, because of the synecdoche, it does not dilate fully. Iris nodules. You can see in this particular picture, there are nodules close to the pupillary region. There are nodules in the middle part of the iris and the mid zone of the iris, that is in the ciliary zone of the iris. So these nodules are nothing but accumulation of inflammatory cells on the iris surface. So nodules are of two types. When they are at the pupillary border, it is called as Keppes nodules. When they are in the ciliary border or on the iris surface, it is called as Busacker's nodule. And when the nodules are present near the angle, it is called as Berlin's nodules. Now, what is seclusio pupillae? Seclusio pupillae is when there is, in severe cases of iridocyclitis or recurrent iritis, the whole pupillary margin is attached to the lens capsule. The complete pupil, this pupil is completely attached to the lens capsule, and the pupil gets separated from the eye, and the pupil is stuck onto the anterior capsule of the lens, and the part behind the iris behind the pupil. So the posterior surface of the iris, there is accumulation of aqueous humor, which makes the iris to swell up. The iris takes the form of a hump, like it swells forward 360 degrees, and then it forms a shape of a hump which shallows the anterior chamber. So this is called as iris bombay. When there is shallowing of the anterior chamber, it goes and blocks the trabecular meshwork, which can lead to raised intraocular pressure. All this problem is generated because of posterior synecdoche, that is, which is 360 degrees posterior synecdoche. The complete pupil is adhered to the anterior capsule of the lens 360 degrees. Occlusio pupillae. Occlusio pupillae is nothing but the pupillary zone is also filled with fibrin matter. The extensive exudation organizes across the pupillary area to form a film of opaque fibrinous tissue called as occlusio pupillae. It is nothing but occluding an opening. The pupillary opening is completely occluded. Seclusio pupillae is the pupillary border is completely adhered, and the aqueous gets formed behind the iris, or it gets accumulated behind the iris, and it pushes the posterior surface of the iris forward, or the iris bends forward, and it is called as iris bombay. So now here the occlusio pupillae is the pupil is completely occluded, completely closed. So that is called as occlusio pupil. Lens. what can happen to the lens in the anterior segment? When there is inflammation, the lens nutrition is affected. So that can lead to formation of cataract. A cataract which is formed secondary to intraocular inflammation or due to iridocyclitis is called as complicated cataract. Any intraocular disease which can lead to formation of a cataract is called as complicated cataract. So vitreous, what can happen? There can be opacities, leukocytes, or coagulated fibrin formation, exudation. These are the features which can occur in the vitreous. What are the other features?
Sir, you're not audible, sir.
Clinical features we have seen, or the clinical signs we have seen to identify iridocyclitis. What are the consequences of all these clinical features? The first consequences is rise in intraocular pressure. When the intraocular pressure rises, it causes damage to the optic nerve. Normal intraocular pressure should be 11 to 21. When it rises, it is called as rise in intraocular pressure or glaucoma, secondary glaucoma. So later on the later stage, patient can develop glaucoma and it can damage the optic nerve. It is reduced over a period of time. What happens when there is a continuous inflammation? The ciliary body gets damaged. The ciliary body is the zone where the aqueous production occurs, and when there is aqueous production is damaged because of chronic inflammation, it can go into hypotony. The IOP can fall down and the eye can go into phthisis. Phthisis is nothing but small sunken eyeball. Because the intraocular pressure is not maintained, the eyeball starts to sink. So coming to sequelae, long-term iridocyclitis, what can it cause? Long-term iridocyclitis, what are the clinical features, or what are the chronic clinical features which can occur in long-term iridocyclitis? As you can see in the picture, there is a white band formation on the cornea. The cornea is completely hazy. So that is called as band keratopathy. There is deposition of calcium salts on the cornea and the Bowman's layer, and it is called as band keratopathy. The iris is atrophic. Iris can completely get thinned out. That is called atrophy. And there can be myotic pupil, complicated cataract, phthisis bulbi, hypotony. These are all chronic sequelae. Means over a period of time, iridocyclitis has not been treated appropriately. Patient can go into all these types of varieties or all these complications: band keratopathy, myotic pupil, complicated cataract, phthisis bulbi. Because of iridocyclitis, what are the problems which can lead to decreased vision? Chronic inflammation can damage the retina, and the patient can have visual impairment because of macular edema. So cataract is common in chronic uveitis, and its treatment with corticosteroids. So once inflammation is there for a long time, we give patients steroids. So steroids can induce formation of cataract, and moreover, the iridocyclitis also can induce formation of cataract. So summarizing the whole class, what are the clinical features mainly which we have highlighted of and iridocyclitis? In iridocyclitis, the most important clinical features are, you divide the clinical feature segment wise. In conjunctiva, we see circumcorneal congestion. Cornea, we come across KPs. Now KPs can be of different types: mutton fat, and fine KPs, old KPs, fresh KPs, red KPs, and so on. So KPs. Then in the anterior chamber, we have the cells and flare, which can be identified only through slit lamp. It is not possible to see them with the torchlight. On the iris can get swollen, iris can be pushed forward, there can be nodules on the iris, Nodules can be of Busaka, or various variety of Busaka or Keppe nodules, and Berlin's nodules. Then in the pupillary region, there can be seclusio pupillae, cyclitic membrane, occlusio pupillae. Iris can be pushed forward. It is called as iris bombae. And over a period of time, patient can develop secondary glaucoma because of raised intraocular pressure. Lens, what can happen to the lens? Lens can develop complicated cataract either due to treatment. What can happen in the retina? Retina patient can have cystoid macular edema. So all these are different types of clinical features. So when you are trying to write the clinical features of iridocyclitis, first you have to imagine the structure of the eyeball from conjunctiva, cornea, anterior chamber, iris, pupil, lens, and so on. So like that, each structure wise you divide the eyeball, and each structure, what are the clinical features seen, why it is seen, what is the etiology of this clinical feature. If you read like that, then it will be easier for you to understand and remember. Don't blindly read the clinical features. Try to understand the clinical features and go through them. It will be easier to understand. Okay. With this, I end my class. Anything, any questions? Just hold on. I'll be taking the attendance. Just recording the attendance. Go to meeting. Check.